The air in the cavern hangs thick with damp and the faint tang of mineral dust. Every step that the party takes sends echoes skittering down the unseen passages, the sound returning warped and hollow. Then suddenly a jagged metallic screech that grates against the very nerves in their body, like stone being torn open by steel. From the shadows ahead, shapes begin to stir, hulking insectoid figures with glistening chitin-plated bodies and cruel scythe-like claws that scrape against the cavern walls. Their small beady eyes catch the faint torchlight, glittering like shards of obsidian. A single call reverberates through the tunnels, and the sound is answered from all around. The echoes begin to close in, left, right, and above, until the party realizes they are surrounded. They've found their prey, and the darkness is about to erupt. Yes, in today's video, we are talking about the Underdark equivalent to vultures, the Hook Horror. Hello and welcome to Dungeon Deep Dive, where we talk about all things D&D monsters, from monsters and their lore to their publication history, where they originated, and how you can use them in your D&D games. The Hooked Horrors, also known as the Vulture Beaks, Hackers, or Cave Dwellers, are large bipedal subterranean vulture-like monstrosities with bony hooks for hands. These little tunnel terrors stand at around 9 feet tall, fully grown, and can weigh up to 400 pounds. They have a head similar to that of a vulture, and a neck with a halo-like crest of oily feathers. Their bodies, however, is a chitinous-like exoskeleton covered in small sharp studs, similar to that of a beetle. This is a very strange looking creature when you look at the art. Whoever thought of this was going on just a mind adventure. The terrifying hooks this creature has for hands come to a length of 12 inches that come to a blade-like razor point at the end that can cut through near enough anything. To make this creature even more weird, it has the head of a bird, the feet of a bird, the body similar to a beetle, but its eyes are multifaceted like that of an insect. So this guy is kind of all over the place. Even though these things look like they could tear you apart with nothing but a glance, they happen to be especially susceptible to disease and parasites, and only manage to live up to the lifespan of around 40 years. So if you are a druid, make sure you get your contagious spells ready in case you happen to come across one of these little babies. Hook horrors, after they reach a certain age, have to shed their exoskeleton, which roughly takes around 2 days to fully shed. The said shedded exoskeleton then drops off into small flakes that scatter around the ground and fall to the breeze of the Underdark. The hooked horrors don't really have the best eyesight, but they do make up for it with their sense of hearing and their keen sense of smell. They have the ability to use echolocation, emitting a high-pitched screech in tight spaces that most creatures cannot hear. This helps them locate nearby objects and obstructions without the need of light. When it comes to the expansion of the population of the hooked horror, they lay eggs in close guarded locations. The eggs look similar to that of a stack of small rocks 3 inches in diameter, and tend to camouflage into bundles of other rocks to hide them from predators. After about 6 months, the eggs begin to hatch, producing a 1 foot tall baby hooked horror. But then within the first year, the baby climbs to about 5 feet tall, but then reaching full height in the next 17 years. So they have like a huge growth spurt in the first year, then they slowly increase. They stay with their parents for the first year of their life while becoming more independent in the second year, then going fully independent in the third. Then if they manage to reach the age of 6, they will begin to seek out a mate to start their own little family. When a hook horror is hungry and decides to go out for the hunt, they are primarily ambush hunters. They will work in groups to take down any creature that is too big to take on their own. They're not known to be solitary creatures all their lives. They prefer to live in families together, which are no more than a dozen hooked horrors or so, but they are led by an elder member of the family. They spend a good amount of time sleeping, then when they're not sleeping, they're usually hunting. When not under attack, they tend to move slow and sluggish, giving them an ability to survive on little to no food. The hook horror are really not picky when it comes to what they eat. They primarily eat meat of whatever creature they can get their little hooks into, but if they are desperate, they are led to eating fungus found in the Underdark if there is no meat to be seen in the area. When they do resort to eating the fungus, most fungus in the Underdark is poisonous to most creatures, but the hook horror has a gland in their abdomen that produces a special enzyme that makes it immune to poison, and I believe this can be extracted and used to make potions of poison resistance. These little hookies have their own language that consists of clicks and clacks that emit from their own exoskeleton. but they are known to speak in Undercommon in their own very special way. I couldn't find any information on how or where the hook horrors originally came from. These things look like they could just be some messed up experiment that got loose and then they started just spreading around the area in the Underdark. Maybe some like drow created these for like a guard or as guards to a city, or like some little guard dogs for the place, but then they escaped and they have just been terrorizing the Underdark ever since. I don't know. Okay, now let's go over the hook horror's publication history. The hook horror made its first appearance in the 1979 White Dwarf magazine number 12, where we get a small section in the Fiend Factory section of the magazine where readers were asked to vote for their top 10 Fiend Factory monsters. They're described as a large, powerful humanoid with vulture-like heads and half-plated exoskeletons, which is mottled grey in colour, and they only have a 10% chance of being surprised in combat. It later then gets published in the 1981 first edition Fiend Folio book, where we get the same stats and info as we did in the White Dwarf magazine a few years before. It later appears in the 1988 Dragon magazine number 131, in the section called The Ecology of the Hook Horror. It explores the biology, behavior, and environment of the hook horror. The study examines their life cycle, reproduction through egg laying, molting process, limited communication through clicking sounds, and social behavior in small groups. While the hook horrors are strong and well armored, they are sluggish, prone to disease, and rarely live beyond 40 years. The article concludes with notes on their strange habit of swallowing silver and electrum coins to aid digestion, and on the challenges and risks of taming them for service. Moving on to second edition, it appears in the 1984 Quest for the Heartstone module. But again, in the module, we don't get anything new compared to what we got in first edition. Next, we get the hook horror in the 1990 Monstrous Compendium Greyhawk Appendix. In this book, it is described as a bipedal underground dwelling monster that looks like a cross between a vulture and a man with hooks instead of hands. The art in this book of the hook horror is absolutely badass too, by the way. I absolutely love it. And when it comes to the combat for the hook horror in AD&D second edition, it says that they are very aware of their territory, so again, very hard to be surprised. If they manage to hit you with both their razor hooked claws in the second edition, then it gets an ability where it would automatically hit you with its beak to add more fuel to the damaging fire. A clan or family of hook horrors primarily live in caves and underground caverns. The entrance is usually up a vertical or steeply sloped rock wall, where each family unit in the clan has its own small cavern off a central cave area. The elder male of the family is never the one that goes and gets his hands or claws dirty, if you will, and is frequently the mate of the clan ruler who takes charge of all hunting or other combat situations and is considered the war chieftain. A family of hook horrors rarely has any infighting within the family. Now that is some strong family bonds that they have. But like any other family, they would bicker and be uncooperative with each other, but they would never shed the blood of any other family member. These guys are not creatures that want to take over vast lands and rule over continents. They're just happy with their own little plot of land like farmers, and never venture to overthrow other hook horror clans. Now when it comes to other races, hook horrors have very attack and kill on sight mentalities, but they do have the smarts to know when a fight is too much for them to handle. This stat block of the hook horror was then reprinted later in the 1993 Monstrous Manual in 2nd edition. Now we move on to 3rd edition. We get the hook horror in the 2002 Monster Manual 2. Now wizards, we need to have a little chat. If you look at the art here, what is this little nubbin down here at the bottom? Wizards, what is this? Huh? The book says that if you are unlucky enough to venture into the hunting grounds of a family of hook horrors, you will know you're in trouble when you begin to hear the echoes of constant clicking and scraping of the claws. We do read that in 3rd edition, when they are under attack, they attack in groups and prefer to use their skills in climbing to attack from above. Also, they pull their strength together when needed to take on more difficult fights. Now on the list, we have the beloved 4th edition. Yeah. We get the hook horror in the 2008 Monster Manual, where it says the horror loves to grab their victims to their death using their hooked hands. Even though the hook horrors are omnivores, they prefer meat over everything else, specifically drow meat. And not surprising, hook horrors are killed on sight by the drows, probably because of this. We then get a variant of the hook horror called the Rotting Hook Horror in the 2008 adventure Demon Queen's Enclave. Nothing much changes stat-wise, except it is now classed obviously as an undead monster instead of a monstrosity. We get a second variant in the Dungeon Magazine number 163, known as the Shadow Hook Horror, that has an ability to cloak itself and become invisible. Then we also get a hook horror called the Hook Horror Dark Fiend in the Dungeons and Dragons Underdark manual. In this one, they give it an attack called Fiend Darkness, where it can essentially cast the Darkness spell, and a attack called a Shriek of Horror, where on a fail, the target is immobilized and deafened. Now moving on to 5th edition, where Mike Merrill's included the Hook Horror in his Legends and Lore monster design column, where he gave a sneaky insight into the development of the Hook Horror in 5th edition. We get the Hook Horror in the 5th edition monster manual, and it is described as a fierce predator of the Underdark. A lot of the lore and information we get in the monster manual is the same as we got in the previous editions, give or take. So let's move on to the stat block of the 5th edition and the 5.5 edition, as well as the homebrew stat block I've made for you guys to use in your games. The Hook Horror has an AC of 15 and 75 hit points with a speed of 30 feet and a climbing speed of 30. They have a blind sight of 60 feet but a dark vision of only 10 feet. So if you're in the pitch black, not moving, and at least 11 feet away from the Hook Horror, you're good. They have their own Hook Horror language and have a CR of 3, which is the same as the Minotaur or the Green Hag. For its abilities, it has echolocation, where if you manage to deafen the Hook Horror, you also disable its blind sight ability. It has keen hearing, where it gets advantage on wisdom checks that rely on hearing, so a deafen spell will completely disable all of its abilities. That's a pretty clutch move. For its actions, it gets a multi-attack where it can make 2 attack rolls with its hooks. Speaking of the hooks, they have a +6 to hit with a reach of 10 feet and deal 2d6 + 4 slashing damage. I'll put in the stat block for the 5.5 edition here, but it is essentially exactly the same as the normal 5th edition monster manual. Now let's move on to the homebrew stat block I've created. This stat block is for a creature I've called the Hook Horror Broodmother, the leader of the Hook Horror family. It is a large monstrosity with an AC of 18 and 105 hit points, with a speed of 40 and a climbing speed of 30. It has blind sight of 60 feet and dark vision of 120 feet. And for the abilities, it has the same echolocation ability as the original Hook Horror, but I also gave it Ambush Predator, where the Broodmother has advantage on attack rolls against any creature it has surprised. I also gave it an ability called Camouflage Carapace, where while motionless against a rocky surface, the Hook Horror has advantage on stealth checks to hide. That and the advantage it gets from Ambush Predator I feel like are a really cool combination. Now for its actions, I gave it a multi-attack where it can make 2 melee attacks with its hooked claws, and the hook attack has a +6 to hit and deals 2d8 + 4 slashing damage. I gave it an action called Grasp and Tear that recharges on a 5 or 6 and targets a large or small creature within reach, and the target must succeed on a DC 14 strength save or be grappled. While grappled in this way, the target takes 2d8 + 4 slashing damage at the start of each of its turns, but also the Hook Horror as a bonus action can slam the grappled target against a cavern wall or ground, dealing an additional 4d8 bludgeoning damage. I've also given it a bonus action called Echoing Screech, where the Hook Horror emits a piercing screech that reverberates through the stone. Each creature within 30 feet must make a DC 13 con save or be deafened for 1 minute. The creature can repeat the saving throw at the end of the turn to try and beat the deafen ability. These things I feel are a great addition to any D&D game that involves venturing into the Underdark to add some real tension and atmosphere to your adventure. The party could just be taking a leisurely stroll through the Underdark when suddenly they begin to hear the clicking and scraping in the area. Not knowing where it comes from, the party could look up and notice multiple Hook Horrors climbing the walls, stalking them from above. Or the party could be hired by a team of drow to go and exterminate a family of Hook Horrors in the area and capture the Broodmother for quotations research purposes. But that is all I have for you guys today on the Hook Horror. Thank you for watching. I hope you all enjoyed the video and found it helpful. And if there's anything I've missed, I would love to hear about it in the comments below. What monster should I cover next? Let me know in the comments and I will add your comment to the end of that video. If you've enjoyed the video, please do drop it a like or a cheeky sub if you haven't. It really does help more than you realize. Thank you all again, and I'll see you all in the next one.